What would you do if your husband blindsided you with betrayal in front of your entire family on the most important day of your daughter's life? That's what happened to me. But instead of falling apart, I smiled and handed him the beginning of his end. My name is Vanessa Morgan, and I was married to Daniel Morgan for 28 years. We had what everyone called a classic Southern power couple, life-charming colonial home in Augusta, Georgia, successful careers, one brilliant daughter, and Sunday brunches with friends we'd known for decades. On the day of our daughter's college graduation, we hosted a beautiful luncheon at Rosewood Grill, the kind of place with linen napkins, overpriced cocktails, and walls that absorbed secrets. The dining room was full, friends, family, professors, glasses clinked, laughter echoed. Our daughter Lila still wore her graduation cap like a crown. I was bursting with pride. Then Daniel stood, lifted his champagne flute, and I braced for a heartfelt toast. Instead, he said, "I've decided to start a new life without you." Just like that. The air turned to ice. Forks froze mid-air. Conversations died. 50 people who knew me, who had been in our home, just stared, waiting for the explosion. But I didn't scream, I didn't cry, I didn't even flinch. I smiled and said, "Congratulations on your honesty." Then I reached into my purse, pulled out a cream-colored envelope, and placed it by his plate. "What's this?" he asked, his voice wobbling. "Something for you to read later," I said calmly. Then I turned to Lila. Her eyes were wide with disbelief. I leaned over, kissed her cheek, and whispered, "I'm so proud of you, sweetheart. This day is still yours." I stood, smoothed my dress, and addressed the silent crowd. "Please enjoy your meal. I wish you all a lovely afternoon." And I walked out. Not a tear, not a scream, just the click of my heels and the sound of 50 jaws hitting the floor. Outside, the Georgia summer hit me like a furnace, but it felt good, clean. For the first time in years, I could breathe. Behind me, the restaurant door slammed open. Daniel's voice sliced through the air, frantic, not triumphant. "Vanessa." "What the hell is this? What have you done?" I kept walking. What he didn't know was that I had been planning that moment for 3 months. While Daniel spent his time whispering to his mistress and draining our accounts, I had been building something stronger than rage. I had been building a strategy. See, Daniel always called me the stable one. I was the one who paid the bills on time, who saved for our daughter's college, who worked late as a senior financial advisor at Redstone Partners, while he chased a series of ill-conceived career pivots, like opening a custom furniture boutique that went belly up in 6 months. I had buried my own dreams so many times, I almost forgot I had any. I wanted to open a financial consultancy to help women in transition, divorcees, widows, overwhelmed mothers. I had the skills, the network, but I always told myself, after Lila graduates, after Daniel finds his groove. What a joke. 3 months ago, I noticed irregular transfers from our joint account. Tiny at first, $300 here, $500 there. But they weren't mine, and Daniel hadn't mentioned any new expenses, so I looked deeper. One account became 4. Transfers to shell companies, luxury expenses listed as consulting. Then I found the beachfront condo in Hilton Head in Cassandra's name, and the diamond bracelet he charged while telling me to cut back on groceries. Then came the texts. He'd left his phone unlocked after a conference call. And there it was, weeks of messages between him and Cassandra Reed, his colleague. She had been to our house, called me for career advice, sang carols in our living room last Christmas. The betrayal was complete. Financial, emotional, personal. And then I remembered something. Something Daniel had completely forgotten. The prenuptial agreement. He had insisted on it 28 years ago, back when I had a sizable inheritance, and he had nothing but debt and ambition. Ironically, he wanted to protect his future earnings. But I had insisted on a fidelity clause. If either party committed adultery and the marriage ended because of it, the violating party forfeited all rights to joint assets, including retirement funds and property acquired during the marriage. That clause never expired. So while Daniel plotted his big restaurant betrayal, I prepared. I met with Philip Granger, a lawyer who specialized in financial divorces. We tracked every transfer, pulled every receipt, subpoenaed security footage, archived every message. My case was airtight. What Daniel didn't know was that I had already filed for divorce earlier that morning. It just hadn't hit the system yet. The envelope I left beside his champagne glass, it held the court notice asset freeze request and a printed copy of the prenuptial agreement highlighted. I didn't go back to the restaurant. I went home. The house we'd bought 15 years ago in Augusta's historic district, the one he promised to Cassandra in a text I wasn't supposed to see. It looked the same. Family photos, our antique clock, the couch where we used to dream. But I was different. Upstairs, his suitcases were already packed, hidden in the closet. He'd planned to leave the next morning. I smiled at the irony. He thought he was the puppet master. But I held the strings. My phone buzzed nonstop calls from stunned friends, messages from Lila, even from Daniel's sister, Debbie, who'd flown in from Chicago. I only responded to one. To Lila. "I'm okay. This isn't your burden to carry. Enjoy your day. We'll talk tonight. I love you." She'd be upset I hadn't told her earlier, but she'd understand. She had my grit and her father's charm, a dangerous but beautiful mix. 3 hours later, I heard Daniel's car screech into the driveway. The front door slammed. Footsteps thundered across the floor. Vanessa. He found me in the living room laptop on my knees, calmly reviewing documents. "What is the meaning of this?" he demanded, holding the envelope. "You served me divorce papers. Today, on Lila's graduation, I thought it aligned nicely with your plans," I said. "You wanted to start a new life. I'm just helping." His voice rose defensive. "You had no right to do this, just like you had every right to choose Cassandra. We all make choices." "The prenup expired," he said smugly. "Actually, it didn't." I retrieved the copy from my folder. Section 12. Fidelity clause remains in effect for the duration of the marriage. Your lawyer should have explained that. Oh, wait. You didn't hire one, did you? His face paled. For the first time, he looked afraid. Daniel's face contorted. Part rage, part confusion, part realization. He looked like a man standing on the edge of a cliff that he'd built himself. "You're bluffing," he said, though. His voice lacked conviction. "Read the fine print," I replied. "Cool and clear. You always skim the details." He stared at the highlighted clause in the document, mouthing the words without speaking. Then came the predictable spiral. "You've always been calculated, Vanessa," he snapped. "But this is cold." I tilted my head. Calculated. Maybe cold. No more cold is abandoning your wife for a woman who sat at our dinner table. Cold is hiding money while telling your daughter to skip the spring trip because money's tight. Cold is using someone's loyalty as a shield for your own selfishness. He flinched, but only slightly. What about our history 28 years together? Does that mean nothing? It meant everything I said, the ache hitting me like a soft bruise. That's why your betrayal broke something I can't fix. There was a flicker of something human in his eyes, but I didn't trust it. "Maybe we can fix this," he tried again. I made a mistake. People make mistakes. Daniel, this wasn't a mistake. A mistake is forgetting a birthday, misplacing a check. You planned this. You moved money. You signed a lease. You wrote text messages about me. You called me weak. His jaw tightened. "You're exaggerating." I reached for my phone, tapped play. His voice came through the speaker. "After the graduation, I'll tell her it's over. A public setting is better. She won't make a scene in front of everyone." Then Cassandra's voice, and she has no idea about the money, and his reply. "None. Vanessa trusts me completely. That's her weakness." He went pale. "You recorded me." "That's illegal." "Not in Georgia," I replied. "One-party consent, especially in your own home." Daniel staggered back a step. He looked like he wanted to yell but couldn't find the words. "I need to make some calls." "Your attorney might be a good place to start," I said, grabbing my keys. "I'll be staying at Debbie's tonight." Debbie's. His voice cracked. My sister's house. Yes, she's upset with you. She saw you and Cassandra at that gallery opening in December. She confronted you privately. You lied. When she saw you hadn't ended it, she told me. That stunned him. He'd never seen Debbie and me as close. Another blind spot. Everyone's betraying me, he muttered. Ironic, isn't it? I drove across town to Debbie's bungalow near the university. She answered the door with a hug so fierce it nearly knocked the air out of me. I just heard from Lila, she said. Are you okay? Better than I expected, I admitted. In her kitchen, the wine was already open. Of course it was. I never thought Daniel would make such a spectacle, Debbie said, pouring 2 glasses. To humiliate you in front of everyone. That's insane. That was the point, I said. Public embarrassment? A clean break. So I couldn't fight back. Debbie's expression turned stone cold. He's always loved the drama, but this is next level. We sat in her sunroom surrounded by books and potted succulents. What did you put in that envelope, she asked. I explained the divorce papers' evidence of fund transfers and the prenup clause that would leave him with nearly nothing. He's going to fight it, she warned. He can try. My phone buzzed. Lila. Mom. Her voice was tight. I'm coming over. Sweetheart, you don't have to. I'm already on my way. Dad's telling people you've lost your mind. He's saying awful things. Of course he was. Daniel couldn't cope with accountability, so he rewrote history. 20 minutes later, Lila showed up, still in her graduation dress. Makeup, smudged mascara streaked down her cheeks. The moment I opened the door, she fell into my arms like she did when she was 5. Why didn't you tell me, she whispered. Because I didn't want to ruin your final semester. You worked so hard. She pulled back. Well, Dad ruined it anyway. In Debbie's living room, I told Lila everything. The affair, the money, the texts, the plan. Lila listened without interrupting. Then she said, I knew something was off. He was different. She bit her lip. And he told me last week we couldn't afford to help me with my move to Charleston. But now I know where that money went. Before I could respond, my phone pinged. A message from Philip, my attorney, emergency filing approved. Accounts frozen. Preliminary hearing set. He'll have access to minimal funds. The rest is locked. I showed the message to Lila and Debbie. Good, Lila said firmly. He deserves it. He's still your father, I reminded her gently. You don't have to take sides. I'm not taking sides. I'm taking truth. Just then the doorbell rang. Debbie peeked through the window, then turned to me. It's Daniel, and he's not alone. She opened the door. In walked Daniel and Cassandra. Cassandra looked out of place. Awkward. Her heel tapped the floor nervously. She was 37, too old to be a wide-eyed ingenue, but too young to pretend she knew what real storms looked like. Daniel, on the other hand, looked livid. His jaw clenched, his tie askew. Vanessa, you need to stop this insanity, he barked. Unfreeze the accounts. Let's talk like adults. Lila stood up. Maybe you should have tried acting like one before you detonated our family. Daniel blinked as if he just remembered she existed. Lila, this doesn't involve you. Doesn't involve me, she said, stepping forward. You hijacked my graduation. You broke my mom's heart. And you lied about money while I worked 2 jobs for textbooks. Cassandra touched Daniel's arm. Maybe we should go. He shrugged her off. Not until Vanessa stops acting crazy. Debbie folded her arms. She's the only sane one in the room. I stayed seated, calm. The eye of the storm. The accounts remain frozen until the preliminary hearing, I said. 3 days from now. That's when the judge will review the prenup and asset division. Daniel threw up his hands. 3 days. What am I supposed to do? You have your personal account, I said. The one you funneled money into for the last year. Cassandra's head snapped to him. You have a separate account with how much interesting. So he hadn't told her everything either. Daniel ignored her. This is vindictive. No, it's precise, I said. There's a difference. Daniel didn't respond to my last comment. He just stared at Cassandra, whose face was now twisted in a mix of confusion and betrayal. How much did you hide from me, Daniel? She asked, her voice sharp but brittle. He didn't answer. You told me you had savings, that the property was a done deal. You said we were starting over with something solid." Daniel rubbed his temples. "Can we please not do this here?" "No," she snapped. "Because I signed a lease with you. I left my job. I told my parents I was moving in with a successful businessman, and now you're telling me your wife froze the accounts and your prenup means you get nothing." I almost felt bad for her. Almost. But then I remembered her laugh echoing in my kitchen while she drank my wine. "This is why you don't build your life on someone else's lies," I said quietly. Cassandra turned to me. Her mouth opened as if to defend herself, but nothing came out. "I thought he was leaving you because it was over," she muttered. "I didn't know about the money. Not like this." Daniel looked between us, cornered. "You both need to leave," Debbie said firmly. "This isn't your house." Lila stepped forward, her voice clear and strong. "Did you know he was going to announce it like that?" At my graduation party, Cassandra looked genuinely ashamed. "I thought he was going to talk to your mom privately." "He lied to you too," Lila said. "Just like he lied to us." Daniel tried one more time, turning his attention to me. "Vanessa, be rational. I don't want a war. We can split things amicably." I smiled. "Daniel, this is amicable. I'm not dragging your name through the press. I'm not suing you for emotional distress. I'm simply enforcing a contract you made me sign. You should be thanking me for my restraint." He didn't thank me. Instead, he stormed out. Cassandra hesitated, then followed. She didn't look back. As the door clicked shut, the silence returned, but this time it felt lighter. Lila collapsed onto the couch beside me. "I've never talked to Dad like that." She whispered, tears threatening again. I pulled her close. "You spoke your truth. That's nothing to regret." Debbie handed us both glasses of wine and raised hers. "To new beginnings," she said. "To something better," I replied, clinking glasses. 3 days later, we stepped into the courtroom. It was raining, the kind of slow, gray drizzle that makes the world feel like it's in limbo. I wore navy blue, understated, professional, unshakable. Daniel sat across from me with a fresh attorney young, sharp suit, but clearly out of his depth in family court. His posture screamed tension. His eyes wouldn't meet mine. The judge, a silver-haired woman with reading glasses perched low on her nose, flipped through our files. "Mr. Morgan," she said without looking up, "do you contest the validity of this prenuptial agreement?" His lawyer cleared his throat. "Your Honor, we argue that the document is outdated given the marriage duration." The judge nodded, flipping to a tab. Section 18, Duration. "This agreement remains in effect for the entirety of the marriage and any resulting dissolution proceedings." That's clear language. No expiration clause. Daniel leaned forward, whispering something urgent to his lawyer, who looked increasingly uncomfortable. The judge continued. "Furthermore, the court finds credible evidence of financial misconduct, including concealed transfers and asset redirection. This violates the disclosure terms in Section 23. She looked directly at Daniel. "I'm maintaining the freeze on all joint accounts pending full discovery. Mr. Morgan's personal account remains accessible. Mrs. Morgan will retain the primary residence during proceedings as permitted by the fidelity clause." Daniel's face turned beet red. "This is outrageous," he muttered loudly. The judge raised an eyebrow. "Mr. Morgan, I suggest you review the contract more carefully. You signed it." She banged the gavel lightly. "Next hearing in 30 days. Discovery will be complete by then." As we exited the courtroom, Daniel caught up to me in the hallway. "Vanessa, please." I turned slowly. "We need to talk. Reasonably." "No, Daniel. You needed to talk before the deception. Before Cassandra. Before you stole our daughter's moment." He looked stricken. 28 years has to count for something." "It did," I said softly. "Until you decided it didn't." And I walked away, leaving him alone with the weight of his decisions pressing against his spine like a vice. News traveled quickly. Friends who had toasted with us weeks earlier now called to ask what really happened. Some offered support, others sought gossip. I kept my answers short. Daniel and I are separating. These things happen. That was all I said. I didn't owe anyone the full story. But Daniel's facade couldn't hold. His image, upstanding entrepreneur, loving husband, cracked under scrutiny. Once the financial freeze hit, things began unraveling. The beachfront condo gone, the new BMW canceled. Even his consulting firm was barely staying afloat without the financial backing I had quietly supplied for years. Debbie called one morning, unable to hide her amusement. Cassandra moved out. I raised my eyebrows. Already. Apparently, she learned Daniel doesn't have the kind of wealth he claimed, and that whatever's left is tied up in court. I laughed. She didn't sign up for hard times, did she? She told her friend Jennifer that Daniel's reality didn't match his fantasy. Meanwhile, I began rebuilding on my own terms. I rented a modest office downtown, put up a brass plaque, Morgan Financial Transitions, helping women reclaim control. My first 2 clients came through word of mouth, both women going through divorces terrified of starting over. I showed them what no one had shown me: how to find stability, how to read a financial statement, how to prepare for court, how to start again. It felt powerful, not just professionally, personally. Lila visited me a week later, just before starting her new job in Charleston. "You're really doing this," she said, looking around the tidy, minimalist office. "Finally," I said, smiling. "It feels like I'm becoming the version of me I buried years ago." "I'm so proud of you," she said. "You're turning something awful into something that helps people." "That was always the goal," I said. "I just didn't know it yet." Fittingly, the final divorce hearing fell on what would have been our 29th wedding anniversary. It was a warm spring morning. Birds chirping, sky cloudless, the kind of day Daniel used to say was perfect for a drive to nowhere. But today, it was perfect for something else: closure. I arrived early, dressed simply. Clean lines, calm colors, a quiet kind of strength. Daniel arrived 10 minutes late, looking like he hadn't slept in days. The crisp confidence he once wore like a tailored suit had dissolved into something looser, more desperate. His lawyer, older this time, but still clearly patching holes Daniel had drilled into his own ship, greeted him quietly before we entered the courtroom. The judge didn't waste time. She reviewed the findings, flipped through our discovery documents, and nodded with finality. The court upholds the prenuptial agreement in its entirety. Asset division shall reflect the terms laid out in the fidelity clause. Daniel didn't speak. He just stared straight ahead, jaw tight. The house remains with Mrs. Morgan. All joint investments shall be split 70-30, favoring the non-violating party as stipulated. Retirement accounts will be allocated accordingly. All evidence presented supports a breach of the agreement by Mr. Morgan. She glanced up, once expression unreadable. This court is adjourned. One gavel tap. And just like that, it was over. Years of betrayal erased by the stroke of a pen. Daniel approached me outside the courtroom. His suit was wrinkled, his tie askew. He looked like a man who had finally grasped the full price of arrogance. Vanessa. Daniel. "I made a terrible mistake," he said, voice low. "I know that now." I waited. "Is there any chance we could try again? Not as what we were, just as something." I shook my head gently. "No, Daniel. That door is closed." He nodded slowly. The finality in my tone seemed to settle something inside him. "I hope you find happiness," he said. "I already have. It was the first honest exchange we'd had in years, and probably the last." 6 months later, Morgan Financial Transitions was thriving. I'd moved into a larger space, hired 2 associates. Clients came in steadily, women navigating divorce loss, major change. I helped them make sense of what they were told was too complicated. I watched them leave, stronger, clearer, less afraid. It felt like breathing fresh air after decades in a sealed room. And for the first time in my adult life, my identity didn't hinge on someone else's. I wasn't just Daniel's wife. I wasn't just Lila's mother. I was Vanessa Morgan, advisor, speaker, advocate. A woman who could not only survive a storm, but help others chart a course through one. Lila came to visit one weekend. She'd just been promoted at her marketing job in Charleston, and she insisted on taking me to lunch to celebrate. "You know what's ironic," she said between bites of grilled salmon. If Dad had just been honest from the beginning, he might have kept half. I laughed. He couldn't see past his own illusion. That was always his weakness. She leaned across the table. But you turned revenge into reinvention. I didn't set out for revenge, I said. I set out to survive. But in doing that, I found something better. That night, I walked through the quiet halls of our home, the home that was now mine. No more eggshells, no more secrets, just soft light, warm hardwood floors, and peace. I passed the hallway mirror and paused. I looked different. Not younger, not colder, just certain. For the first time in decades, I recognized the woman staring back. Daniel now rents a modest apartment in a quiet neighborhood. His business, once fueled by my credit line and strategic planning, has shrunk considerably. Cassandra is long gone, having moved on to someone with less emotional baggage and more liquid capital. Most of our mutual friends drifted toward me after the truth came out. Some apologized. Others simply stayed quiet. I didn't hold grudges. I didn't need to. Because I wasn't living in the shadow of betrayal anymore. I had stepped fully into the light. Some betrayals break you, others reveal you. And if you're lucky or determined, they do both. Have you ever been underestimated by someone who thought they knew you? Drop your story below. I read every comment. And if you found strength in this story, subscribe and share with someone who needs to be reminded reinvention is the best revenge.